Let's podcast alongside Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovies inside Eford Studios in downtown Raleigh. Thanks to Empire Properties and thanks to Copiers Plus. Check them out online at copiers-plus.com. Tomorrow is the deadline, folks. If you're watching on YouTube, pause it, hit that QR code with your phone, and you can enter an organization to potentially receive $500 from Copiers Plus. 40 organizations, $500 each, a total of $20,000 in donations, all part of Copiers Plus and their 40th anniversary, which is coming up in November of this year. So if you think there's a deserving organization, by all means, nominate them at copiers-plus.com/40 years of caring. Put dashes between 40 years of caring, or just pause the YouTube and hit that QR code. Weird day in ACC coach land. I think, would Leonard Hamilton be the final piece of the old ACC basketball guard that started with the retirements of Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski, eventually Jim Boeheim? You got Jim Larinaga quitting essentially this year. And then you had Tony Bennett at the beginning of the year. You just kind of look at the landscape right now and you're thinking, man, what was the ACC? If you needed further solidification, further crystallization, that the old ACC is long gone. It's in the history books. We've closed that chapter. I feel like Leonard Hamilton, I always forget he's in his 70s. Doesn't look like he's in his 70s, but that man looks good for 72. Is calling it a career. A very good career, too, at Florida State.
You beat me to it. He's actually 76.
Oh, wow.
He does not look 70. Does not look a day older 50. If you put me and Leonard Hamilton on Radio Row together, and I've even said it to him, like, I look older than Leonard Hamilton.
I'd like to know what we look like in our 70s. Can't wait to see what that looks like.
Yeah, it's you know, it's the last of the Mohicans here,
right?
For Florida State, for Leonard Hamilton. They lost just a horrendous basketball game on Saturday up at Boston College. They had a 5 or 6 point lead late, like last minute, like epic Jay Williams at Maryland comeback type loss.
Yeah.
Like just brutal.
Yeah.
I often quietly as I can, when I have moments with Elliot Avon, I always say, you know, you were the big loser in the pandemic because of what had happened to your baseball team, not only in 22, but, you know, his team in 21 was arguably his best team ever. 20, it was arguably his best team ever. They didn't have a tournament, right? Leonard Hamilton was deprived of some of his roses by the pandemic in 20 and not having an NCAA tournament.
I agree.
That was his best team. That was his best chance to kind of get that Final Four and to get some of the recognition. Instead, he kind of ends up like a John Chaney, where you're like, wow, that guy was really, really good. And not always at a great traditional stops, right? I think your dad could shed some light on what Miami basketball shuttered their program.
Yeah.
You know, so for him to have the success he had at Miami back when they were in the Big East was truly remarkable. He was in the NBA for a hot minute and then came and established Florida State, where, you know, Florida State football is not unlike an Alabama type deal, right? Where you're the basketball coach at Alabama, you're the basketball coach at Florida State. You're not exactly running on everyone's radar.
No, 634 wins, 500 losses in 38 seasons between FSU, Miami, Oklahoma State. These are not exactly known as basketball powers, but you can establish at those football schools a type of athletic team that can get you places. And I think at its peak, what are we talking about here? Like in the 2010s, that's probably when Leonard was running his hottest. What was the year that they won the ACC tournament down
12?
in Atlanta? Was it 12 in Atlanta? Mm-hmm. That was a great team with NBA products on it. It was a hell of a fun team to watch. But, you know, with NIL and
look at me not even knowing my own years. 12 was Miami.
12 was Miami.
Let's look.
Was it 16? 15?
No, I think it was before Miami.
Oh, okay.
How about this, Joe?
How about we do a little research?
ACC tournament champions.
Should we do some research?
No, it was Atlanta. You're right. It was 13.
Okay,
because it was the Scott Wood, Alex Johnson, the guy with the sticker, Carl Hess, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, because I know that Gottfried was told by a ref. 12.
Okay, so I was right.
Florida State 12, Miami 13.
Yeah,
there we go.
This is 2 days in a row. You're like, no, wait, okay,
wait, no, wait, yes. only we had the answers.
If only the Google machine was there for
These
us.
Googles
Anyway,
always letting us down.
that was peak Florida State time frame. And to your point, he had run it back there in the pandemic year with a really, really good squad. But getting back to the beginning of this, Leonard Hamilton was the right coach for a program like Florida State. Now what? Right? And it in a weird sort of way, every school when the ACC was peak basketball had the right coach in place that fit what they were trying to do. Now what? What is the direction of Florida State going forward? I mean, you can see the template in these SEC schools, right? But you're making a face. Does Florida State have the money to run like those SEC schools?
As far as they care enough? No, obviously not. And they're also, we should point out, in an NIL lawsuit. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean.
So you see this. You see, okay, who's the right coach at Syracuse? Well, Jim Boeheim was Syracuse. All right, well, what is the direction of Syracuse going forward? Tony Bennett was Virginia. All right, well, what direction are they going in? So there's been this, and I've seen this phrase used a lot. I know Luke DeCock used it in the News and Observer this morning about the brain drain that has occurred in the ACC. And the conference is now in a position where not only are you disrespected in football, but now your basketball product, which was your identity, is lacking in identity. I don't know what ACC basketball is anymore. And the worst case scenario, and I jokingly floated this out at the beginning of the season when it looked like the ACC was going to have a very off year. But what if it's not an off year? What if we find ourselves in a situation where Duke and John Shire are Gonzaga in the ACC? And who would be the St. Mary's in this equation? Well, I was like, who's the St. Mary's in this equation?
It would be Clemson right now, since they're the ones who made the tournament last year and made the Final 8 last year and look like they have the potential to be a Sweet 16 team again this year.
I thought it might be Pitt, but no, Pitt's out here losing at home to Virginia. That's a bad. We'll talk to Patrick Stevens about just how bad things are looking for the ACC. So that really is the worst case scenario for ACC basketball. And I don't think I'm being alarmist when I say this, because everybody's kind of going through an identity crisis right now, right down to North Carolina, Hubert Davis, which we'll get to in a second.
But this gets us to, is it the money or is it the coach? Well, we've been trying to tell you in this portal era, in the NIL era, it's about money.
Yeah.
Yes, your coach has to have the basics, as we saw Saturday over at Cameron. Your team has to be ready to play. Your team has to be motivated. Your coach is always going to be in charge of that. But it's not by accident. I'm watching, I don't even know if I said this on yesterday's program because I didn't go back and listen to it.
Okay.
I'm watching Auburn for really the first time in a minute last night on Saturday.
No, you didn't mention this yesterday.
I'm watching Auburn and I'm like, yeah, Janai Broom, get it. Okay. Wow, I'm watching Auburn. I go, wow, these guys look a lot like Auburn. They're big, they're fast, they're athletic. Gosh, they get up and down the floor. And then I'm looking and I'm like, okay, here's the guy. Broom's the star. Who's the guy who's got 15, 16 points? I'm looking at him. My brain doesn't work the same way it used to. His name is Miles Kelly, 6'7", athletic wing. Oh, this is a good-looking guy, right? Oh, yeah. He began his career at Georgia Tech.
Oh,
I watched him over at the PNC, piss on NC State and beat them.
Now it's ringing a bell.
So, so Auburn's second best players from Georgia Tech. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching Ole Miss, our old friend Chris Beard. And I'm like, they have this big from Belmont. Like, who would have thought to go to a lesser conference and get a round mound to rebound? No one's ever thought of, oh, wait a second, NC State did that. Their leading scorer is our old friend Sean Padula from Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, right.
So what you're telling me is this is straight from your old days of the radio bits, right? This is radio bit. Get the fucking life coach on the phone. Hey guys, the ACC is really down right now. So who would win? Would it be Duke? Or if you could pick an all-star team of the other players on the rest of the teams, who would win? 919-444-2211. Well, guess what we're seeing in real fucking time?
Yeah.
They're just not in the ACC.
No.
Okay? So the SEC has the money to go out and say, hey, I need a scorer.
Yeah.
Sean Padula. Auburn, I need an athletic wing who's 23 years old. Hey, Miles Kelly, wasting your life away, as Josh Pastner told us, with negative NIL.
Yeah.
Okay? So, yes, we're losing all these coaches. Agree.
It is
not a great thing.
It is not a great thing for the ACC.
But
however,
they're all getting out for the same reason. They don't have the funding to put together the right roster anymore, or B, they don't have the mental capacity to say, I want to put up with this new wave bullshit, and I don't want to do it this way. And there's nothing wrong with a Leonard Hamilton, Jim Boeheim, Roy Williams, any other person, Tony Bennett at his age saying, this is not the way I've won. This is not the way I want to do it. I don't want to do it this way.
Real quick, I know that we talk about these coaches and the brain drain. I want one quick thing to say. Yes, Roy Williams looked at the landscape and said, man, I don't want to do this anymore. Jim Larinaga made it abundantly clear. Tony Bennett made it abundantly clear. I can see where Leonard Hamilton is going, but also he's in his 70s, and you do get to a point where, man, how much longer do I want to do this? Age does factor in. Jim Boeheim stuck with this longer than he probably should have at Syracuse. Don't lump Mike Krzyzewski into these coaches. I'm not saying you did. What I'm saying is one thing that drives me a little bit crazy when we talk about where we are with the ACC, they're going to lump Mike Krzyzewski in with the coaches that looked at the landscape and said, I don't want to do this anymore. That's not what Mike Krzyzewski did. Mike Krzyzewski understood where things were going. He actually played the game. What is happening at Duke with John Shire is specific to Duke, and like we've talked about, trying to figure out what other legendary coaches have never been able to do. Can I keep this thing that I built going rather than the guy replacing the guy failing miserably, which gets us to North Carolina and Hubert Davis, which is still up in the air. And I think there are legitimate questions as to whether or not he still wants to do it a particular way. Is he okay with where college basketball is? We've asked this question. We've wondered out loud. And yesterday on Hubert Davis's radio show, he said some interesting things. And I know how it's going to be framed, but to me, it actually just brings up some more questions. This is from Adam Lucas over at Go Heels. He had the expanded quote from Hubert Davis from his radio show. Quote, I am going to increase the staff. It's needed. I never would have thought 4 years ago when I took the job that 100% of what is needed is a general manager. There is so much on the plate that will take you away from doing the most important thing, coaching basketball. We're going to hire a GM. We need a director of marketing and fundraising for an NIL program. There needs to be a video coordinator with graphics and recruiting and a recruiting coordinator. All those different types of stuff that have to be built out, whether it's from specific hires or grad students. The old model for Carolina basketball, in terms of staff size, is not sustainable. It has to build out because there are so many things in play with NIL, agents, international players. You need a bigger staff to maintain things, and so that I can coach basketball, end quote. Now, there's one way to frame this. One of the ways to frame it is, and I'll give Al Hood over at Tar Heel blog the tip of the cap and how he framed it. This indicates to him that Hubert's going to be back next year, that the conversation that takes place, he's going to adapt and they're going to go forward. I don't know if that's the right framing, because I think that is devoid of a lot of context of what's been happening at North Carolina the last 4 years. The most cynical way of looking at it is, why did it take you this long to understand where we are with college basketball? This is not a new phenomenon. This did not catch anybody by surprise. This is being caught flat-footed. You have to, in this day and age, understand where things are going. On top of coaching, you have to have a vision as a coach of where these things are going. So right off the bat, I would question, hey, Hubert, get it that the light bulb seems to have gone on about what you need. As he said, the old model for Carolina basketball is not sustainable. But we've been having this conversation for several years. This is not a new phenomenon. So I would ask the question, why now? The other thing I would ask is, okay, cool. You want a general manager. Well, then what exactly was TJ Beisner doing when he was hired back in 2023? This is from Inside Carolina, back on Byline by my guy, Sherelle McMillan, on September 11th, 2023. TJ Beisner hired to lead UNC basketball NIL efforts. And maybe this is just where the key component of all of this comes into play, and I might answer my own question. While he'll work closely with Hubert Davis and the UNC program, Beisner will not be an employee of the university. So he wasn't technically a GM, even though he was brought here from Kentucky to do exactly that, to do a better job of coordinating Carolina's NIL efforts. Now, depending on who you ask, either it didn't mesh well, He got squeezed out. Beisner got squeezed out because of a consolidation of various NIL fronts, which we've seen, by the way, not unique at North Carolina.
No.
Not unique at North Carolina, where there's been a consolidation of NIL collectives. We've seen it at State. We've seen it at other places, right? That's the polite way of putting it. The more harsh way of putting it, depending on who you ask, it was, Hubert knew all these things and refused. Just didn't want it. Overruled the suggestions, even though everybody around him was understanding, hey, man, we got to do this. So ultimately, it all comes back to the head coach. You're the one making the ultimate decisions. I get what he's saying when it comes to, I got a coach, but it's well beyond that, which gets us back to Leonard Hamilton and how I see this playing out going forward, to wrap my point. And the old guard and how much longer you want to do this, given the way that you're used to doing it. How much longer do you see Hubert Davis looking at the landscape and trying to fight this battle? And clearly he understands he's on the hot seat. Otherwise, he does not talk like this at his radio show. So this just backs up what happened on Saturday at Cameron, where he talked about, I believe in this team, and essentially saying that the team still believes in me. He then doubles down on this on his radio show with, we're going to hire a GM, which for those who are not paying attention will go, okay, finally. All right, good idea. They're finally doing this with basketball the way they did it with football, who hired, their GM and all that kind of stuff, or what Duke's doing from the jump with John Shire. Because who was John Shire's first hire?
From Nike.
Who was John Shire's first hire?
The Nike exec.
The GM, right? But again, that actually dismisses some of the things that have gone on behind the scenes that got them to this point, and legitimate questions as to why Hubert Davis finds himself in this situation, even though there were attempts to modernize Carolina basketball. Now, you could say, hey, Ovies, at least he gets it now. I agree. Sometimes everybody has to run their own race, all right? I mean, trust me, as a father with a teenage kid, you understand that very well. Sometimes you got to run your own race, and you give Hubert Davis credit for saying, all right, man, here we go. But it might be too little too late. And the way I see this playing out, again, this is where I get into my pure speculation. I hope people understand this is just me reading the room. The way I see this playing out, we get to the end of the season, they missed the NCAA tournament, and Hubert Davis is going to look around and say, nah, I can't do this, or this is not what I want the program that I love and that has meant so much to me to continue in this direction. So he ends up stepping down for, quote unquote, the good of the program. And he means it, not in a cynical way. I also want to make that clear. It would not be a cynical move. It wouldn't be one of these things he's just saying it. It's one of those things that I absolutely believe in his heart, much like Roy Williams beat himself up on April 1st of 2022, right? No, 2021, when he's like, oh, Roy this, Roy that. He believed it for the good of the program. And as Hubert Davis, being such a Dean disciple and having come up with Roy Williams, he could do the same thing. But that's my pure speculation of how this thing could play out. But that's where we are with Carolina basketball right now, man. It ain't pretty. Thoughts, Joe?
No, you just, that was very good. I like that.
I'm drinking this bourbon because I'm trying not to cough. I got some crud in here, man.
Yeah, it's everywhere. But it's not.
It's not norovirus.
It's not with the Wolfpack women putting Kara in her place last night.
No, it's not that. We're going to talk to Mitch Northam about that here in just a little bit.
Housekeeping.
Thanks to Enovana. Check them out online at enovana.com. Green Cleaning Solutions. Joe, guess who's coming to the house today?
Yes. You have mess inside your mansion or trash in your cabana. Get it green, clean with Enovana.
We got Sully's tomorrow night in Garner. Golf and Gather. Still time to sign up. $15 entry. You get the closest to pin and longest drive contest. There will be prizes. There will also be exclusive, only available at this event, OG Triangle Media hats.
Not that hat.
Not that hat. This is a Founders Club hat. You could have gotten this being part of the Founders Club.
Okay.
But this hat is only available to you, the Sully's Golf and Gather participant. So email Giglio, giglio.joe@gmail.com, or the OG goes digital @gmail.com. What time are we going to be there?
We have the bays. We have 3 bays from 6:30 to 8:30. So 2 hours, but we'll be there by 6.
Got it. That'll be a lot of fun. We are going to be at Happy and Hale on Thursday, noon.
A nooner.
Okay. Afternoon delight.
New for us.
At Happy and Hale in North Hills. In the meantime, download the app and use our promo code
OG25.
What's that going to get you, Joe?
25% off your first order on the app. But remember, Happy Plus Hail on the app when you're in App Store. Remember, you get a free smoothie just for signing up for the app. And remember, for your birthday, you get a free bowl. So even if your birthday was February 3rd, or even if your birthday was January 3rd, you're still within the month. You'll still get that free bowl. So do yourself a favor, get the Happy Plus Hail app.
Big thanks to our friends at Home Field Apparel, homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code OG24 to save 15% off your order. Got new sweatpants yesterday.
Thank God.
Very excited about this. One of these days, I'm just going to roll up to the studio in the sweatpants.
Okay.
Eyes up here, Joe.
Okay.
Eyes up here. So go to homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code OG24 to save 15% off your order. You want to buy more home field stuff, but you're looking at your budget and you're like, man, I don't know. We'll save money with Matt Davis over at State Farm. Save money on home and auto, and then the savings can go to more home field apparel. State Farm has you covered with our guy, Matt Davis.
And Matt will be out tomorrow at Sully's in Garner.
I'm excited
So
about
if you
that.
have any insurance questions in person, do it to it.
Do it. Or just call them directly if you can't make it. 919-779-8277. And of course, our thanks to Breeze Through. It is peak car wash season right now because all the salt and all that stuff from the various snowstorms that we ended up having, it's all still on the roads and your car's getting all gross and stuff. Take it to the Breeze Through. Get the laser wash and get your gas, coffee,
So many options for
and everything
Breeze
else.
Through.
So
Our
many
friends.
options. So check them out, breezethrough.com. Again, that is breezethrough.com. You know, it's funny. We spend so much time talking about how the ACC men's basketball is suboptimal at this point in time that occasionally, and I'll admit this, we forget that, oh, hey, Duke and Carolina are playing a ranked game at Reynolds on Monday night in the Play for K.
State. Yeah.
What did I say? Duke and Carolina?
Yeah.
Sorry. Duke and State playing in the Play for K at Reynolds yesterday. A very exciting game. Mitch Northam, WUNC, our guy at OG Triangle Media, part of the Women's College Basketball Podcast, is joining us now on the Heaster Automotive Group hotline. Mitch, it's happening again. Women holding it down while the men suck.
Yeah, I was looking at ESPN's bracketology this morning, and they have 9 ACC teams in, and they also have all 3 triangle schools hosting in the first weekend of the tournament, which would be, I don't think that's ever happened before, and that would be wild and would kind of make this the epicenter of women's college basketball that first weekend of March Madness, which would be pretty cool. And yeah, last night's game, absolutely lit. I think that's probably the best game I've covered this year, just from like an entertainment perspective. Also just an atmosphere perspective. NC State always does such a good job with that Play for K game. It's hard not to shed a tear during halftime. If you've ever been there before, Debbie Antonelli and everybody involved with that, they bring the pink jerseys out, all that stuff. Isaiah James, just absolutely box office last night. Duke, throws a really good punch there in the second quarter. And then she said after the game, it's just something about them blues. I don't like them blues. And it got to her. And so career high 36 points for her, kind of announcing herself that, the calendar's turned to February and it's time to turn things on for NC State.
Yeah, the quote from James was, Duke and Carolina, them blues don't sit right with me. So I just bring my all every time we play them. We just don't like blues. That's it. And State fans have to love that attitude.
Yeah, as she said something else. She was, I'm reading, I wrote a little bit about her at For the Win, USA Today's sports and pop culture site. And she was just like, it's a rivalry. And we don't always hear that from the folks, some of the younger players here in the Triangle. But she said, this is Kay Yao's day, and we didn't want it to go a different way. So clearly, like that still resonates with the NC State players. And they absolutely brought it last night. Really fun game, really entertaining, packed house. I still think I've always thought this, that Reynolds Coliseum is the best college basketball venue in the Triangle. It's my favorite place to see a game, and one of the best women's basketball venues in the country. And they brought it last night. And all 3 Triangles teams, even though Duke took that L last night, in pretty good shape for the tournament.
Yeah.
Was Isaiah trying to keep him honest with the 4 free throw misses? Because she was 15 and 19 from the floor, Mitch.
Yeah, I guess so. When she wasn't at the charity stripe, it felt like she couldn't miss. There were times where it felt like she could get to the rim whenever she wanted to. really was the bus driver last night for sure. I mean, they have a really good backcourt, Sanaya Rivers, Zoe Brooks, Zam Jones coming off the bench, but Isaiah is the player, I think, to me, that really has like that superstar potential. And, we saw it last year as they made that run to the Final Four. She was really kind of the catalyst for that, playing well in big games. And I think in the past year, since kind of the start to that run to the Final Four last year, she's also really grown in the estimation of eyes of WNBA scouts, just some folks I've talked to in those circles. I think she could be a first-round pick. This is a little bit of a weaker draft than last year's. There were W scouts in the building last night, Eric Tebow with the Lynx and somebody from the Atlanta Dream. And I think there's a chance that she could hear her name called in the first round in May.
Part of me wishes West would have made his Final Four run in a different year, because I still feel like he doesn't get his due, right?
Yeah.
That was overshadowed by
the men,
by the men, even though he had been building towards it and has had obviously the ACC championships are already on his resume. But part of me is kind of like, I wish that he would have done it in a different year. Is it possible? I know they don't have the same interior this year. Do you think it's possible that they can make another run, assuming they're not in South Carolina's bracket?
Yeah. I think for them, it's going to come down to a little bit of bracket luck, but I definitely think that they have the backcourt talent to get there. And, my questions about the front court that I've brought up, I think I talked about this with you guys in the preseason, then, a little bit on the women's basketball podcast here and there. I had some worries about the front court. They brought in, a player in the off season to sort of fill that role. She got hurt, didn't really work out. So then he kind of had to throw these freshmen into the fire. And it's kind of been a blessing in disguise, because I think it's kind of worked and the cream has kind of risen to the top, and they figured out who can give them minutes in the front court. Tilda Trigger is a 6'6" freshman from Sweden. And since she's become a starter, they're 9-1. And she's played really, really well in certain spots for them. Last night, it was Lorena Oewu, who is also a freshman, played really well in the fourth quarter, was rolling to the rim and getting some buckets over Toby Fournier, who is Duke star freshman, who might be the ACC freshman of the year. So that those two kind of played well in a really big game last night, I think is a good sign for things to come. And they might be what NC State's needs to kind of put this thing over the top in March.
Mitch Northam is hanging out with us. If you want more women's college basketball talk, we do have the Women's College Basketball Podcast with me, O'Brien, and Mitch on the OG Triangle Media, OG Media YouTube page. So go check that out for more. All right, I think we've spent plenty of time talking about NC State. Let's talk about North Carolina and where they're at right now. What's like a 5,000-foot view of the Tar Heels right now going into the final stretch of the season?
Yeah, they're looking good. I think they have successfully, turned the page from the Deja Kelly era. UNC this season, they're already at 20 wins. It's the fastest they've reached 20 wins in 11 seasons. They're the only ACC team this year to complete a road sweep of the California schools. That road trip out west has been really hard for teams, especially the teams that have to start with Cal, who's pretty good this year. NC State lost out at Cal. North Carolina is the only ACC team to win at Cal this year.
Wait, you're telling me you invited two schools who excel at non-revenue sports and they're having success against the traditional ACC teams? Wow, who could have possibly ever predicted that? Mitch, could anyone have ever predicted that?
Indeed.
Way to go, Randy Woodson. Way to go.
Yep. Stanford is kind of having a little bit of a down year, but Cal is right there to kind of step into their shoes and picking up the slack. Cal's having a good year. They're going to make the tournament for sure. But yeah, North Carolina, it's Alyssa Utsby, it's Lexi Donarski, Maria Gokdang stepping up, Renaya Kelly. They've got a crop of freshmen who have been contributing as well. Blanca Thomas and Lainey Grant, Sierra Toomey. North Carolina's thing this year, as it has been in many years under Courtney Bankart, is defense. They're 8th nationally in field goal percentage allowed and effective field goal percentage allowed. So they really just try to crowd crowd people and force turnovers and get after it that way. They've lost 4 games this year, but all 4 of those losses are to ranked opponents. And I think only 2 of those losses are by double digits. One was against UConn in Greensboro in November, and I think if you replay that game now, it's probably a lot closer. I think North Carolina was still trying to kind of figure out who they were at that point in the season. And then the other one was at home to Notre Dame, and I just kind of think Notre Dame's going to do that to everyone this year. I think Notre Dame is probably, if you ask me to like make a prediction for the national championship, I think it's them. I think they're going to win the ACC. I think they have the best backcourt in the country. They're going to be a really hard team for the rest of the teams in the ACC to deal with.
Mitch Northam, check him out. Women's College Basketball Podcast on our YouTube channel. Of course, he is online. He writes for USA Today and, of course, for the UNC. Mitch, we appreciate it. As always, we'll talk to you later, man.
Can I make one more point real quick about the Hubert Davis thing as it relates back to women's college basketball? Because I was listening to you guys talk, and I listened to Hubert, read some of his comments last night, and I was thinking, GM. Oh, wait. Courtney Bankhart has a GM on the women's basketball staff, and she has a video coordinator, and she has 2 people with creative content and services in their job title. Yeah. So to me, like, if women's basketball has already had these things, and had them last year as well, this is not a new thing, right? It's to me, this is Hubert's choice to not have these things. It's not like he asked for them and Bubba said no. Yeah. To me, that's my read on it. I mean, if women's basketball already has these things and you don't, and you're not keeping up with the times, what are we doing here?
I agree, man. I agree. There's a way this is going to get framed, and I'm not quite sure it's the right way to frame it. I think the way that you just laid it out, and as I was saying earlier about, okay, man, why did it take you 4 years to kind of get with where things were going? I think those are valid questions based on how Hubert Davis positioned things on his radio broadcast. All right, Mitch, we'll talk to you later, man.
All right.
When we talk about the ACC, guess what? It's brought to you by Keller Williams, the Donnelly team. Check them out, trianglencommercial.com, or call them directly at 919-616-8681, Joe.
Brian and Julie, they're there for you. You need new office space. You need a bigger boat. There are people. Give them a call. Much like our friend Matt Davis, they welcome phone calls. Have a conversation, 919-616-8681.
Let's continue with the ACC, shall we? And bring in our friend Patrick Stevens from the Washington Post. He is the true basketball bracketologist, except no invitations, because Patrick nails it. He's on the He's Tried About a Group Hotline. Patrick, what's up, man?
Joe, how are you guys this morning?
I mean, I'd be better if the ACC was better, but it's bleak, dude.
It's bleak. Bleak is the word.
And we were texting yesterday, and I'm like, oh, come on, it can't be that bad. And then Pitt goes and loses to Virginia at home, right? Louisville this past weekend, like, hey, Louisville's doing a good job. They're winning games on the road. That's kind of key. That's how they're building their resume. And then they lose to Georgia Tech. It's a bleak picture right now. You sent us this Excel spreadsheet with the quads. If you're watching on YouTube, can you explain to me, like I'm 5, what I'm looking at here?
Okay, so this is essentially kind of a look at how the team sheets look like to the committee. And so you have quad 1 games are home games against the top 30, neutral site against the top 50, road games against the top 75. And then quad 2, I think, goes to about top 75 at home, top 100 neutral. So 51 to 100 neutral, and then 76 to 135 road. And I sent you this yesterday. So Pitt's actually dropped 10 spots and Virginia jumped 20 spots.
Jeez.
But essentially those are your quad 1 and quad 2 games. And so if you think of each team there's 2 opportunities against each team plausibly, whether you play them at home or on the road. So there's 36 of them that you could possible matchups that you might have on a given day in the ACC.
Yeah.
And so of those 36, only 11 of them right now would be quad 1 games. So less than a third. And that's just not a lot of opportunities, especially in comparison with the Big Ten and the SEC and also the Big 12. And so this is sort of the net effect of having been so poor in non-conference play. You just simply don't have the same kind of opportunities because your teams didn't go out and give themselves much of a resume in aggregate. Obviously, Duke did. Louisville and Clemson, I think, are in good shape. But everybody else has work to do. I mean, I think if the tournament began today, you'd be staring at a 3-team ACC. That's 15 teams that wouldn't make the tournament.
I was going to say, is 4 the best case scenario?
No, I don't think 4. I don't think it's the best. I mean, I part of the problem is you're sitting there thinking it's hard to imagine at this stage like a North Carolina playing well enough on a consistent basis over the next month. Or Pitt, frankly, because Pitt did a lot of decent work early on and just hasn't been as good in league play. You've got that great question of, does Wake Forest get over the hump? And you've also, even though they haven't done a whole lot, your Smooths, they're sitting there kind of on the fringe, like not that far off. And it's not hard to imagine a team just amassing enough quantity and not doing anything foolish and being an option there for the committee. Remember, there's an extra at-large spot this year because the Pac-12 no longer exists, at least for a couple of years anyway. So you got to fill the thing with something. And
as I always like to say, Patrick, you got to fill out the field.
You got to fill it out.
You got to put in 68 teams, man. That's how it works. So what
and it might even be more here before long, right?
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. All right. So you had also texted this to me and Joe. UNC current net 45, Q1 1-9. UNC at the end of 2022-2023 net 46, Q1 1-9. So basically, it's an identical situation.
Basically, an identical situation with a month of almost largely, I don't know, well, they have 9 games left, and 6 out of 9 of them basically aren't going to do them any good at all.
No, that's not very helpful. 6 out of 9 is not nice for them.
So basically, there's 3 games I think that could help them. The Pitt game, they go to Clemson, and so that's in the next week. And then it's a month full of games that don't really matter and will only hurt them if they lose.
Yeah, I'm just looking at
the return game for Duke.
I'm looking at Ken Pom alone. Let's just go by Ken Pom numbers. So they host Pitt on Saturday. They're Ken Pom 42. They go on the road to Clemson, Ken Pom 28. After that, it's Syracuse at 114, State at 99, Virginia at 108, Florida State at 85, Miami at 196, Virginia Tech at 158. And of course, they close out the season against the number 3 Ken Pom team in Duke. And I'm looking at the chances here. The problem is, it's not like Ken Pom's predictability here is all that great for the Tar Heels. They got a 65% chance of winning against Pitt. They got a 28% chance of winning at Clemson, and of course a 20% chance of winning at home against Duke. So this is, speaking of bleak, to get back to the start of this conversation, it's pretty bleak for Hubert Davis and the squad going into the final stretch.
It absolutely is. And, when you really sit down and think about it, and I know you guys have talked about this plenty over the last few months, when you dig into the data, and this isn't so much bracket related, but the issue with them is very obvious. Like, when you think of Carolina teams like forever and ever and ever, right? They just absolutely maul people on the offensive glass, second chances. And it's basically, you've got 2 really good bigs out there at one time. And this is, in the Ken Pom era, the worst offensive rebounding team that North Carolina has fielded. It's the first time they've been under 30% offensive rebounding percentage since Matt Doherty's last year. Like, that's the reason why, as much as anything else, why this Carolina team, I see Joe Giglio doesn't like that as much.
Joe's making
No,
a face.
I love it anytime anyone uses an exception when they say, since Matt Doherty, wow, that's really weird. They've had 2 Hall of Fame coaches for 54 years, and none of those examples exist except when we go to
Matt
the
Doherty.
2 times.
Yeah.
Now, Hubert and Matt, when you don't have
Was Bill Guthridge
an
a Hall of Famer?
all-timer.
Was Bill Guthridge a Hall of Famer too?
Well, he's in the homeboy.
Oh,
Hall of
he
Fame
is
for
in the
sure.
Homeboy Hall of Fame. Well,
Him and
Dean Smith is in
They
the,
both are.
and they're in the Homeboy
Getting
Hall of Fame.
State in not eligible in 1973
That's
and
true.
Duke,
That's
by
true.
the way.
That's
So-
true. That's true.
No, I just laugh every time anyone mentions like, this, oh, really? Oh, that's
don't say.
wild.
Weird.
That's wild, Carolina. I wonder if anyone told you that when Roy retired.
All right.
You're about to have a new reality to the world. Oh, weird.
Speaking of Duke, we started the conversation about the worst case scenario for the ACC going forward with the brain drain, because Leonard Hamilton retiring, and we've seen everything else that's happened since 2021, that the ACC worst case scenario is headed towards a West Coast Conference-esque setup where you got Duke and everybody else. You got Gonzaga and everybody else. I don't know who the St. Mary's is in this equation because nobody's consistently stepped up, right? So that's curious to me. Is Duke given how the ACC is right now, in danger of not having a number 1 seed?
No, I don't think so. In fact, just to use your example, like it hasn't cost Gonzaga number 1 seeds over the years to be in the WCC.
But Gonzaga has built that reputation over time, and sometimes I wonder that Duke is going to get caught up in the churn of how people are talking about the ACC, and it's going to put them in a position where they're going to point to an SEC team that doesn't have the same record, but they're going to say, hey, but look at the metrics. They're coming out of this really difficult conference. I mean, things that have benefited the ACC in the past, don't get me wrong, that will now benefit the SEC, whereas Duke is going to get caught up in the churn of ACC discourse.
If the question is this year, it's not, in part because of that Auburn victory, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, I don't think that if Duke chugs along here and only loses 1 or 2 more times, they're going to fall off the number 1.
I don't see them losing a regular season game in the ACC. I can see them getting plucked in the ACC tournament by somebody who catches fire. I mean, we've seen that before, but in the regular season, I do not see that happening.
I don't either, but stuff happens, right? Like, I mean, they frankly kind of. I was going to say Wake and NC State kind of had their shots at them just in the last week or so.
Yep.
So, but over the long term, it'll be interesting to see exactly where some of those programs settle in. Where does a Virginia settle in post Tony Bennett? Where does a Florida State settle in? Where does Miami settle in? I mean, like, we can sit here and wonder how much these programs are going to recede a little bit or a lot in a post Hall of Fame coach caliber world.
All right, let's go on a high note, because Joe's making faces and we're like, nah, man, we don't know how this is going, right? It's once again bobblehead season, Patrick. It's bobblehead season. For those who are not aware, Patrick Stevens has an incredible bobblehead collection in the room where he broadcasts from, his office. What do you got for us today, Patrick?
Oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to continue.
Patrick, come on, man. This is not your first.
right.
This is not your first rodeo chatting with us. We're going to ask you about.
I'm going to go ahead and offer one up.
All right,
because this is one that Joe knows. I've got little Trey here.
Nice.
Trey Turner.
Nice.
Just make sure it's the real Joe Giglio.
Right, not the WIP Joe Giglio, who cannot stand Trey Turner, and Trey Turner cannot stand him.
So
and Giglio occasionally gets astray because of the Philly Joe Giglio.
Did Joe Giglio? Did you find a place of honor for your Trey?
My tray is at home right now, but Joe and I have talked about a shelf for me.
No, we got to get you shelving.
So once we get the shelf, Trey will be behind me.
Yes. By the way, where's the ACC basketball acrylic?
It is over behind a Shane Larkin and Pete Gillen bobblehead.
Hey, you know who Shane Larkin's dad was?
Barry Larkin, right?
Well, he's saying Jerome Bettis is also from Detroit.
Sorry, that was a key back in the salad days of Florida.
I forgot that was like a big thing.
Yeah. I'm in a nostalgic mood with when Miami and Florida State were like running hot in the ACC, right? And Shane Larkin was part of that
12 and 13.
That hot run,
back to back,
hot run back in the day. All right, Patrick, we appreciate the time as always. Let's check in next week to see how bleak it is in the ACC, shall we?
We sure shall. Looking forward to it.
We might start having to go into, is NC State going to miss not just the NCAA tournament, but the ACC tournament as well? We're officially on that Wolfpack watch. Anyway, man, we'll talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Tell me Joe Giglio is going to hit the golf course later today without telling me he's going to hit the golf course later today. He's got the peaches on from Rowback. That's how I know.
It's a day. It's Tuesday.
It's going to be 70 degrees.
Supposed to be, yeah.
I was going to say, it's a gorgeous golf. Even I would consider going out to the golf course today.
Stop.
In my jeans.
Yes. In your sweater or button down or whatever. Dork.
Would it be okay if I showed up in a Rowback hoodie to the golf course?
Yes, it would be.
Okay,
perfectly acceptable now.
All right, fair enough. You can find all sorts of, as Mike Krzyzewski would say, acceptable things if you head to rowback.com.
You know, I listened to the Matt Norlander as a podcast, not on the YouTubes.
Yeah.
His Krzyzewski actually did sound like Krzyzewski when you're just in the car and not watching.
No, he has a soundboard with that.
Oh, he does?
No, he has a soundboard with the Krzyzewski audio on it. That's not him. That's his audio. No, that's his audio. He has a sounder. Amazing. No. Let's go, Duke. That was the audio.
Let's go, Duke. When he said, let's go, Duke.
No, that's the audio board.
I got all these years later.
Yeah, you did get got. You did get got. Don't get got and take on some imitation polo and gym shorts and very, very comfortable pants. Go to rowback.com. Use that promo code OG20. Valentine's Day is right in the corner. You know what's played out, Joe?
Flowers.
Flowers are played out.
You know what's played out? The never nudes.
That's played out.
You know what's in?
Ice cream cakes, mini cakes, and all that kind of stuff. Look, I used to say this all the time in the radio days around Valentine's. Flowers die. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
It's not a very lasting thing. They're pretty. They're there. They might smell nice, but then they eventually die. But they don't satisfy you like ice cream.
No.
And that's exactly what Two Roosters has going on right now. A 4-pack of Valentine's mini ice cream cakes for $40. 4 individual heart-shaped mini cakes, including one of each flavor: chocolate fudge, strawberry shortcake, salted caramel peanut butter cup, and white chocolate raspberry. If that is not a way into somebody's heart, I don't know what is. You might have to reassess your relationship if this ain't going to do it.
Jared keeps coming up with hits like every single day.
Yes. And look, with Two Roosters, sometimes you have to understand flowers, never nude, all that stuff. It's not the name of the pajama, by the way. Because Jared's like, what in the world are you talking about? It was called Nearly Nude.
Oh, I thought it was never.
No. That's not nearly.
Never nudes. You know it's Valentine's season. Promo code Ovies.
No promo code needed for this at Two Roosters. Just go to tworoosters.com. And then as you and your loved one are eating ice cream and just being absolutely...
No idea where this is going.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know where this one's going.
You and your loved one are eating ice cream. You know, you're just kind of hanging around, enjoying being chunky together. You know what, though? You go, you know what? You know what else we can do together? Let's go work out together.
Make some good choices.
Let's make some good choices together. Let's go to O2 Fitness, which is more than just a gym. O2fitnessclubs.com is the website.
O2 Fitness, so much more than a gym.
Because here's the thing about making good choices. You don't do it alone. You need support. So not only do you have people around you, but you also want to go to a place that is in on your goals. And that's exactly what O2 Fitness is about. Great staff, great location, because you ain't going to a gym if it's not conveniently located. Let's be real about this. Equipment's great, the people are great, and they also have services beyond just the gym itself, like Renew Physiotherapy or Loop Nutrition. So go to o2fitnessclubs.com to find out more. Again, that's O2 Fitness. Thanks to DraftKings. Check them out. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Tutties. I've heard it referred to it that way.
Okay.
Pay dirt. Heard it referred to that way as well. You call it whatever you want. Just know that if you want to put some money down on anytime touchdowns, the place to do it is DraftKings. With the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, you're going to be hanging out with your friends. You're going to be bragging to each other about what you're doing, or maybe you feel like you've got insight from this podcast because Brooke Pryor and the Kansas City Chiefs have an interesting relationship when it comes to wins and losses. We gave you that insight. Use it. Go to DraftKings and use the promo code OG24. Again, that's OG24. New customers will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Again, that's only on DraftKings. So go ahead, head out there. They got promos all the time. They got single game parlays for things like the Super Bowl. You can look at the ACC. You can look at futures. There's all sorts of stuff to do. But in real time, during the Super Bowl, when you're hanging out with your friends, I can think of no better place than DraftKings. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. Use that promo code OG24 as a new customer. You will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. DraftKings, The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball.
Time for your hot and cold of the day. It's brought to you by our friends at 1-800-PLUMBER. The name is in the number. 1-800-PLUMBER and Air. A one-stop shop from our guy, Hayes, is going to help you out. Upfront pricing, which is key with situations like this. 24/7 support. So if you've got some sort of emergency, you got somebody to call.
Plumbing emergencies don't happen like between the hours of 8 and 5 during the week. I promise you.
No.
That toilet will leak. That incinerator is going to leak, and you're going to sit here and be like, I could fix this. I watched a YouTube video of it. No.
Nope.
No.
Heck,
Guilty.
when are you going to have time?
Guilty.
When are you going to have time to go on YouTube when you're powering through after you had a slave in Sunday? You don't have time for that. So contact our friends at 1-800-PLUMBER. What? All right, who's your hot, Joe?
Our hot is, and then we need a song. We're working on the song. But our hot is Bill Courtney.
Okay.
You may say, well, who is Bill Courtney?
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that Bill Courtney is the interim coach at Miami. Bill Courtney, I have advocated for Bill Courtney to become the first interim coach in history to be fired because
it was bad.
After Jim Larinaga quit after they lost to Mount St. Mary's, Bill Courtney's first 9 games, they went 0-9. Included were losses to SMU by 43 and Stanford by 37. Note, I did not say Duke and Clemson. I said SMU and Stanford. Good teams, but by 43 and 37?
No.
But here comes Bill Courtney to the rescue. Saturday, they beat Notre Dame at home for their first ACC win of the season. They beat Notre Dame 63-57. So congratulations to Miami and Bill Courtney for picking up his first career win just 10 games later.
My cold is a little bit of a double entendre. It's cold because NC State and UNC were on the ice on Sunday for the Governor's Cup. NC State went on to win the game. Couple of empty netters at the end as Steve Rice and the crew were trying to get back in this game late. But NC State pulled it out. I have to deep down think that Roy Cooper, former governor who had to hand the trophy to NC State, was hurting inside just a smidge. But an announced attendance of 8,200 people, all-time attendance record for the Governor's Cup.
That was over at the Lenovo Center.
That was over at Lenovo Center. You can't pack that many people over at Invisalign. I can tell you that. So the reason why I say cold, not only did they play hockey on Sunday, and Jacob's team had a great time. The not a rivalry is also a very, very cold thing now. Because I just illustrate this. I'm just bringing this up. Anytime people talk about rivalries and everything else. And I have a larger question for Carolina fans that I might ask in the Hey Joe for prompts purposes for the mailbag, but I might reverse it this week. But before we get to that, I just want to say, for the whole business about State and Carolina and rivalries and everything else, you don't get 8,200 people to show up unless it's a rivalry. You don't get that many people to show up and get involved and get loud if it's not a rivalry. Same thing happens with wrestling. Same thing happens with baseball when NC State and Carolina get on the baseball field. All these other things. So we can get into the nuance of basketball and all that other kind of stuff, but we found the ultimate cold take, especially when 8,200 people are showing up to watch club hockey. Paid. Yeah. Club hockey between NC State and Carolina. We saw that many people at Frozen Finley. It wasn't between Duke and Carolina at Frozen Finley. No. It was NC State and North Carolina. Just something to pop. Lightning Round brought to you by Sam Jones. Check them out in downtown Raleigh, of course, and in Greenville as well. Great barbecue, Eastern-style barbecue with that pork skin mixed into the barbecue. That smoke really, really comes through. Not to say that their sauce isn't good, but you know barbecue's great when you don't need the sauce. And that's key with our friends.
I was Sam there Jones. For a lunch yesterday. I almost called our friends and said, hey, man, our marketing's working a little too well for you because it was a little bit difficult to find a parking spot yesterday.
It's all us.
Once again, thank God for our program. because
Otherwise,
we've invented all of this.
people would not know. So
No.
you got Super Bowl catering as well, or you just want to pick up some sides to take somewhere?
Mac and cheese.
By all means, go to
Mac
Sam
and cheese.
Jones and pick those up. Let's get into the lightning round. It is the Roger Goodell State of the Union address.
Oh,
We also have your media day where everybody,
it's not really media day. Whatever they call it now is more appropriate.
what's it, opening night?
Yeah.
I think is what it's called,
Yeah.
right?
There's no such thing as the media anymore.
So these were the things that I thought were most amusing from the media day or from the opening night. The first one, we'll start a little on the fun side. It's from Jalen Hurts. Apparently, a reporter asked Jalen Hurts how to get more handsome. Jalen Hurts is a very handsome man. I don't think anybody's going to deny that. Here's what he had to say.
How can I get more handsome? Sorry? How can I get more handsome? My girlfriend says I'm the most handsome quarterback in the league. Any advice, like something to do with my hair? I'm desperate for anything.
I don't know if I can help you on that one. That sounds like a DNA thing.
Sorry, buddy.
Like I said, not media.
Not
It's just
media.
it's just a day.
Although I don't know how I feel about
It's
the
just
whole.
a day.
I'm not quite sure how I feel about the whole, like the reporter, whoever's there asking that question, just basically being like, "Hey, Jalen, my wife wants to get with you."
Yeah, again, not a reporter.
Just say-
They've let like random people in to ask to get the marriage proposals to
Just say-
Tom Brady.
Like if you really want to go, just say it that way. Like, "Hey, man, you're her hall pass. Any interest?" See where that goes, right? Guy's wearing an upside down pineapple shirt. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? Hey,
Take
Jalen,
back the pineapple.
buddy.
It's got to be right side up though.
Pineapple's gone.
Can't take it back.
The pineapple's gone. Sorry. I see a pineapple. I'm going, I see. Meanwhile, over to Travis Kelce, who had a question for the media who showed up for NFL opening night.
If I could ask the media one question, why are you guys leaning into this whole ref thing? You know what I mean? Like, why are you guys leaning into it? That's all I got, though.
That is a good question. I think I know the answer to. The reason why the media is leaning into it is because it gets the people going. You're
Sure.
looking for easy ways to get engagement. Well, bring up the Chiefs and the officiating. This was something that Roger Goodell was asked during his State of the Union, and he said it's a ridiculous theory. He was asked about public perception the referees are favoring the Chiefs.
Officiating has favored the Chiefs, not my perception, public perception. How much of a concern is that for you in the league?
Well, this sort of reminds me a little bit of the script, right? That I write a script and I have the script for the entire season. Listen, I think from a lot of those theories are things that happen in social media and they get a new life. As you say, it's not your theory, but it's out there. Nobody wants it to be their theory. And so I understand that. I think it reflects a lot of the fans' passion. And I think it also is a reminder for us how important officiating is. And I think the men and women that officiate in the NFL are outstanding. They have the highest possible standards. That's ridiculous theory for anyone who might take it seriously. But at the end of the day, it's something we always have to continue to work on. How do we make our officiating better at all times? And if you look at the Chiefs record, which I think is an amazing thing, people talk about the competitiveness of our league. The Chiefs, with their 15 wins, 15-2 this year, 11 of those 15 games were within one score. And I think that talks about the competitiveness of our game and the importance of how we officiate it, but also the competitiveness of how we play it.
That's Roger Goodell on the perception that the Chiefs are getting the benefit of the doubt. There was a story last week that you're making a face, but there was a story last week that was bubbling up about a gambling scandal that was supposedly bubbling up in the NBA and also in college hoops. And now you and I are both in agreement.
Terry Rozier.
Yeah, you and I are both in agreement. We didn't really talk about it last week because other things are going on.
NCAA was one of the college teams.
So to me, these are examples of the system working.
Yes.
Like these things get busted because the system
Absolutely.
is working. Without legalized sports wagering, you don't get these things flagged. Now, there's a deeper conversation to be had about props, over-unders, how many threes in a game. Those are very granular, direct things that a player can affect if they wanted to.
Yeah.
as opposed to the overall spread. But the fact that the sports betting industrial complex is flagging these things and bringing it to the attention, again, I'll repeat this, is something that is working. So I bring this up to get back to the Chiefs. And if something was truly scripted, don't you think there'd be so much money on the line that we would want that stopped? The entire industry would collapse if these things were actually playing out. Okay, this is not the WWE where you can get a leaked script, literally, or The Bachelor, right? Because I think The Bachelor's back on TV.
Yeah, I think.
And you can go to some overseas markets and bet on The Bachelor, but you can also go to the right websites for the right reasons to find what's going to happen, and then you can make those wagers if you want, right? So that's what this kind of conversation is just loser talk, I guess. I really don't know how we got to this point, and I do like Travis Kelce's question. Why are we making this a thing in the media? It's one thing for fans to get online and do it. Why is like Adam Schefter getting involved? Why is he framing it like, I'm just putting numbers out there, knowing full damn well what he's accomplishing? I don't understand. Anyway, just something to ponder. Just something to ponder. All right, next up in the lightning round.
The lightning round.
Speaking of Adam Schefter, we got this, a repost from Myles Garrett. It looks like the Cleveland Browns have finally broken Myles Garrett, and he has requested a trade. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I have loved calling the city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It was always to be to competing for and to win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns.
Man, who even has the capital to go and get him? You're talking multiple, at least 3 ones, at least.
Although if I'm the NFL, you go to the NBA and say, hey, look, we just did a 1-for-1.
Is there someone who's 5 years older who's even more brittle that we can...
Just go ahead and do that.
Davian Clowney was the number 1 overall pick, as was...
just do
a make a 1-for-1.
Just make a 1-for-1
and a 1. I mean, they did throw in the 1.
This is true. Yeah, I see this, and I also see
Cooper Kupp. You talk about game changers.
He's an absolute game changer. And I'll be curious to see how this all plays out for Myles Garrett in particular. But we're also seeing, people making some hard decisions, whether it's the player or the team just decided to move on, like Cooper Kupp apparently has been informed that they're seeking a trade.
Sure.
For his issue is just availability. I think he only played 12 games this past season.
Well, he got a max deal, and then now you're lopsided because you have a guy in Puka Nacua on a rookie deal who's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So you can't invest in one position overly.
So all this ties together with just the general nature of where we've been over the last couple of weeks. Carolina Hurricanes kickstarted things with the Mikko Rantanen trade. And then we get this AD Luka trade, and people are still trying to process that. And then we get some additional trades in the NBA, and then now we're having this happening in the NFL. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks with everything happening on the trade market.
As I often say, the NFL stands for not for long.
No.
Can you imagine Dallas giving up, let's just say, 3 1s for Myles Garrett and playing him with Micah Parsons? Look where you are now. You're cooking with gas.
That would be pretty wild.
There are many topics for lightning round today on OMG.
Speaking of the Dallas Mavericks, as I said, people are still processing what's going on. Has Mark Cuban said anything? I mean, Mark Cuban's no longer.
Pretty sure he had to put out a release that basically said, I have nothing to do with any of this. I know people are confused, but
I gotta wonder what Cuban thinks of all of this. Obviously, he's not the majority owner anymore. He's still in the mix, though. You think he's thrilled about this?
I texted him and I said, I'm so confused. And he wrote back, that makes 2 of us. So that kind of tells you right there, he wasn't involved. And by the way, this new ownership, Patrick Dumont and Adelson family, they're business people, right? They're Vegas casino, real estate moguls. They know nothing about the NBA and basketball. So they have fully given Nico the keys to do decisions and make big, bold moves like this. So I believe Mark. I think this is just more of a shock. The comment he said now is coming to light about, filing on Monday, which obviously is getting pulled back to light. But yeah, I mean, I texted him and he literally said that makes 2 of us. So he's probably just as shocked as we all are.
So there you go. That's Michelle Beadle on the Run It Back podcast.
No, that wasn't Michelle Beadle. That was tell me it's no longer the year of the wolf.
Wait, who was that?
It was Chandler Parsons.
It was Chandler Parsons.
With Mark.
Sorry, I had the setup wrong. I forgot that was Chandler Parsons.
Tell me 25 is no longer the year of the wolf. Look who makes an appearance on the OG.
Fair enough.
Oh, man.
Fair enough. Look, I've been trying to catch up on reading because the NBA hasn't exactly been on my radar right now. And I've been trying to catch up with what's going on here. And a lot of folks are just in complete awe of this. And I understand why. But the one thing that I cannot shake is Luka's own role in this and the reputation that he has developed over time about his conditioning.
Sure.
And why the Dallas Mavericks might just be like, look, man, like they're owned by a gambling company. Well, they're probably saying, you know what? I'm betting on the fact that you're not going to be this guy because you don't take care of yourself. That's their bet. That's within their own.
I've seen it floated that they didn't want to sign him to the long-term deal because they basically want to move the team they either want to move the team out of Dallas to Las Vegas, or they want to use whatever they can as leverage to be able to open up their own casino in Dallas.
I've seen that too.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. There's all sorts of.
So obviously the cleaner your books are.
Yep.
You don't have a $400 million contract on the deal. Whatever. I've been trying to make sense of the deal at all. It does not make any sense to trade. Literally, you saw Mikal Bridges get 5 first-round draft picks over the summer. Rudy Gobert a year before, 2 years before, four first-round draft picks. Like it just doesn't make any sense what they got in terms of assets.
Well, what's interesting, I was reading Tom Ziller on his Substack, and Nico Harrison. This is from the Tim McMahon, Ramona Shelburne story on ESPN. Nico Harrison decided early on, team sources said, that the best way to trade a player of Doncic's caliber was to pick the trade that he wanted rather than open up the process to avoid Doncic as agent exerting their own leverage. It would also avoid the crippling fan backlash that might influence the deal. So we're just going to do it as if backlash isn't crippling enough, but it was like what are you doing? And then you kind of get dragged through the mud and things like that.
Ask for forgiveness. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So Ziller continues, and like Utah's involved in all this stuff. And he basically says there's a narrative starting to set here. Harrison was legitimately skeptical of the dude in his early 20s who had been named to first-team All-NBA every season Harrison had been employed by the Mavericks. He looked at Doncic's exploits and wanted more. Quote, before the last season, Doncic hired a full-time body team, Slovenian national team strength coach, this guy's name I can't pronounce, as well as a physiotherapist. Did he go to Renew Physiotherapy? And along with other guys. The Mavericks then fired the training staff Luka liked, so he hired his own team. The changes did not result in a healthier or more available Doncic, and the internal frustration only increased as the team sources complained about poor communication between Doncic and the Mavs staff this season. So this all gets back to what I said yesterday. Are we at a point with Luka where this all creates the FU mode of fine? You didn't think I could, or yada, yada, yada. Now I want them in the Lakers, and I'm even a bigger star now because I'm in LA, and I'm the heir apparent to whatever happens with this team post LeBron. Fine. F you. I will show you. Thanks to our friends at Hometown Realty. Check them out, myhtr.com. Buy, sell, calculate. You can buy and sell with confidence with our friends at My Hometown Realty. myhtr.com is the website. You've got a house. You want to hang out. You just bought this house with myhtr.com. And you want to enjoy the backyard. It's starting to warm up. You know what you do? You contact our friends at Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority. Bugsbite.com. Get that misting system for the backyard so that way you can grill out and not worry about mosquitoes, along with the treatments that you can get in your backyard. And, of course, on the inside of your house, Pest Authority can take care of you. Again, go to bugsbite.com. Big thanks to the Butcher's Market. They bring you the OG mailbag on Fridays, and they're also going to bring you a fantastic a super spread, if you will.
For the big game.
For the big game on Sunday. So go to thebutchersmarkets.com. You can easily pick up stuff and go, or you can go ahead and put an order in. It's all of it. It's flexibility. It's all with our friends at the Butcher's Market. And of course, Whitaker and Hamer, WH.lawyer, an amazing website, amazing attorneys and counselors at law, and they can help you out with a small to medium-sized business, personal issues as well. Again, that is WH.lawyer. All right, let's get out of here with some Hey Joe. I actually have a Hey Joe question for the audience, specifically to you, Carolina fans. And
There we go.
I was going back and forth with Sean on Blue Sky yesterday. Sean being the main heel splainer of this program. And his general attitude was, after 22, this was in response to the Duke fan who called in and asked, how long are Carolina fans going to use 22 as a coping mechanism?
Sure.
The copium levels are off the charts this week and bringing up 22 and everything else. And Sean's overall point was, I'm not going to be as extreme as Rob Perez, worldwide about apathy, but I'll admit, ever since 22, I do care a little bit less. Maybe
Kay's gone too.
It may be, because I've gotten older too and life happens. I'm not as angry as I was. I mean, those are all factors in there, but he cares a little bit less. So here's my question to Carolina fans, especially the extreme ones. If the Duke basketball game doesn't do it for you anymore because of what happened in 22, and NC State is not your rival, what are you doing? What moves the needle? What gets you going? This is a legitimate question. You're above NC State. You're apparently above Duke now because 22. I don't care about it. And this is a sincere question. I'm not trying to be an ass, because the way the messaging comes across is very much in the. Are you like the blue guy from The Watchmen? Well, I can't remember the guy from The Watchmen, where he goes to Mars and he's like, "Earth bores me now."
I saw that.
Yeah, I know. Why am I can't remember the guy's name anymore. Somebody's going to tell me.
I'm going to give Bubba Cunningham the
is it Pitt
sports phone number and get him to call in and say it's Pitt.
It's Pitt now.
Yeah,
that's the true rival.
The true rival.
The true rival. Fair enough. That is a legitimate question. I'd be curious to get responses to. Maybe we'll do it on the mailbag.
919-444-2211. Call the OG Sports phone and curse or don't.
All right, I think this was left over from yesterday. I never got to it.
Hey guys, first time listener, long time caller here. And just coming home from the biggest basketball game in the state of North Carolina today. You know the one I'm talking about, where there's a really big, really good white center who everyone was rooting against. He's probably going to win the league MVP. I'm, of course, referring to the Hornets-Nuggets game at the Spectrum Center tonight, where Miles Bridges had one of the worst late game possessions I've ever seen in my life. So just wanted to add that. I'm sure you guys will be talking about that big game tonight. And love the podcast. Thanks for listening.
I enjoy our listeners. The level of cope is fantastic. All right, this I want to say this came from a 336.
OG Sports Phone. This is Enoch and Raleigh. First time, long time. I'm an or don't person. Just wanted to give some added insight to the Luka trade. Sources say that apparently the issue at hand was actually not so much his weight, but that thing in gym class when you go to shoot a jump shot and then the other annoying dude in class throws the ball, his ball, and knocks your ball out of the air right before it's about to go in. Apparently Luka did that every day. And other players didn't like it, so they traded his ass. Can't blame him. Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
That's as good of a reason as any. I mean, it's still one of the more bizarre trades in the history of any professional sport.
All right, I think we got one more here.
Guys, the Duke fan was talking yesterday about how Carolina cares more about beating Duke than winning themselves, or cares more about Duke losing than themselves winning. I'd like to say you put me in a position where now I have to defend Carolina. And this is why everybody also hates Duke. You dickhead. No, every team and their fans cares more about their team in winning than the other team losing. You elitist prick. It's not the case. It's not the case with State versus Carolina, or Carolina versus Duke, or State versus ECU, or ECU versus State. All of them. It's absolute nonsense. Shut the fuck up.
I don't know. I've seen it on all sides, man.
I understand the caller's position, because you know this about the Basketball Jones event, where I realized, am I going to have to be the guy who defends Duke in these situations? Is that what's happening here? Am I in that position now?
Oh, shit.
Ah, damn it. I'm going to be labeled as a Duke homer all of a sudden. Which, yeah, whatever. Not if you believe some of the people in the comment section of YouTube, which I won't get into because...
It's always tomorrow.
What I'm saying is, I know you got to go golf, but once again, Duke fans are not all Duke fans, but the ones who are very active in the comment section are very much acting as though,
you just can't listen to Jimmy.
You
can't see Duke basketball.
You don't see the vision. You don't understand the great game like we do.
The beautiful game.
Yes. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. We'll see you tomorrow.